So in here we should have the best-selling Orient Star watch, or at least the best-selling according to TUS Watches, who are the ones who loaned this in for me. So thanks to them, I'll leave a link to this in the video description if you want to check it out. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Orient Star, they're basically like Orient's fancy brand. So you've probably seen Orient before. They're a Japanese brand who make some pretty decent affordable watches, normally in the dress watch and diving space. And these watches are fairly good. They don't tend to be the best spec though, and Orient Star in some ways gives you a bit more of that for a slightly higher price, as well as a bunch of other small extras too. Now, to my knowledge, the best-selling Orient Star watch, at least at many retailers for a long time, was this. And I actually wore this watch to my wedding, believe it or not, when I got married. And that is the Orient Star Classic. Now, this is a minimalist watch, much in the vein of something like the Orient Bambino, just with a couple of quirks. It's got some really nice frosted hands, which you can't really see here, but I'll show you some macro footage if I've got any of this watch. It means that you can see the hands extremely clearly, basically, at all angles. And it's also got a power reserve indicator at the top center there. So if I charge this watch up, you'll see it moving up there ever so slowly, which is actually quite useful. I know it's not to everyone's taste visually, but I find them quite cool and interesting at least. But yeah, this watch, it is good. It's just not the best made watch in the world, and to some degree, it's kind of been overtaken since it was released. This one came out a fair few years ago now, and it doesn't even have a sapphire crystal. I couldn't remember for sure, but I've just checked it with the diamond selector before filming this, and it is only mineral from the looks of it. It is a nice domed piece of mineral, but I already have quite a deep scratch in it just down here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it does have a significantly better bracelet than most Orient watches, with a milled clasp there, which is a rarity for Orient. And it's also got a slightly more intricate and nicer decorated movement. So that's kind of like the standard, at least in my mind. And I'm excited to see how this new model stacks up, and really if it's any better in terms of construction or anything. So yeah, let's get it open and take a look. Now, this isn't the final production packaging. This is just sample packaging because he sent me a few watches at once to take a look at, and it's just cheaper to do it this way, although there isn't anything spectacular in the box. Now, both of these are actually the same model from the looks of this, and they've got one feature in common with the Orient Star Classic, which is that power reserve indicator from the looks of it. Now, I've got the web page up here to the side of me. Not sure of the naming of this watch, and Orient's naming system has never been the best, but Tom's got it listed here as Orient Star Standard, so maybe that's the name of this one. And apparently one of the differences, at least from the title, of this watch compared to some other watches from Orient is that this one is actually fully Japanese made from the looks of it. I can tell you straight away that the case finishing is definitely better than the Orient Star Classic. Now, when I originally got the Orient Star Classic, I think I paid somewhere in the 300s for it, but that was pre-pandemic, and a lot has changed since then. This new watch costs currently £529 on the day of recording this, so it is a little bit more, but sadly, everything seems to have gone up since the pandemic. One thing that I've also noticed here is that it says we have a sapphire crystal though, which is quite appreciated, and this is definitely the clearest sapphire crystal I've looked at for a while. There's been a good string recently of sapphire crystals that have been pretty cloudy, definitely lack in the legibility department. This certainly isn't one of them. Very, very clear on both of these watches. Two quite funky colours there, but you'll see, versus the likes of the Citizen Suyosa 37mm I looked at, this crystal's much, much clearer. Still flat. But for a sapphire can be dodgy from time to time. This is pretty good. But yeah, the case finishing definitely a step up. It's got that kind of Seiko-like case shape in a way. Now, Orient is connected to Seiko, so they haven't exactly stolen it. Kind of like a sister company. They're both under the Epson umbrella. Now, let's get them hands in a slightly better position. I can see why these are the best-selling model for Orient Star. Out of all the ones that they've got on the site, there's only one other one I think might look better, and that was one of the old 60s dive watch reissues that came out not too long back. But this is certainly more versatile. Unusual colours, both of these. Not sure what they're described as. We have like a salmon on the right and almost like a baby blue on the left. Quite like the salmon one myself here. It's almost towards an orange as well. They also have a slight texture to the dials, which I'll give you a close-up of in a second. And compared to the Orient Star Classic, it definitely has much higher quality markers. That was one of the kind of big letdowns with this watch on the right. The markers are extremely flat and they just look cheap. Whereas this one has actually a bunch of different markers all over it, but all of them look higher quality than the watch on the right. And the hands are also different too. These have some lume in the center, and they've also got some fancy finishing as well. And you know what? We should probably do a quick test of that luminescence, especially because the only other experience with Orient Star that I've had was with the watch that had no luminescence. So not a clue how this will perform. For comparison, we've got the Erebus Ascent on the left, which has very strong lume, and then the Citizen Ciosa on the right, which has much more mediocre lume. Now this has some tiny lume pips around the circumference, although they seem to have faded near instantly, unfortunately. But the hands seem to be holding on much better, certainly better than the Ciosa on the right, but I'd say it's still closer to the Citizen than to the Erebus. Wow, really good hand finishing actually. So I just had a look at that off camera there. Now the hands look similar-ish to something like the Christopher Ward C63 I looked at. It has like a brushed central portion with the lume, and then polished on the edges. It looks really high quality. And something else I've noticed is that the power reserve indicator at the top goes up to 50 and not up to 40 like the other one. So clearly it's using a different movement. Apparently the F6N43. We get a look at that. We do get a look at that. Looks very similar to the movement in the previous watch. Still has that pattern all over the support plates and rotor. And it also has solid end links on the bracelet, you can see there, which is nice. Definitely expected at this price point though. But yeah, I should get a 50-hour power reserve there. Now it's not a screw down crown because I'm able to wind that straight away. It feels extremely smooth. Not a high beat rate movement. Really don't know a lot about this movement in all honesty. Assuming again it's some sort of variant on the typical caliber that Orient likes to keep reusing in their watches. Just a modified version, I expect. Definitely towards the side of lower beat rate on this. Maybe that's the kind of trade-off to get the higher power reserve there. Depends what you like, really. Not the thinnest watch in the world, but I think for average wrist, this should be pretty good. Width weighs 38.5. Oh, wow. Oh, it is smaller than I thought then. I don't know why. I didn't check the sizing before looking at these, but to me, it looks bigger in the hands, maybe because it's got quite an expansive dial there. Lug to lug could be some of it too. Let's have a look at the lug to lug. 47 mil, so it's getting there towards the longer end of things. Not by much though. And 12.5 mil thickness. That's including the crystal, which is fractionally raised from the bezel. It still might fit me better than I expected. I'll just try the old diamond selector on this. This will tell me if it is actually sapphire, which I expect it probably is. Or it may have dodgy product naming, but they don't tend to lie about their performance. So we have the Citizen Ciosa 37mm that I mentioned earlier. Gives us a nice strong reading there, which means this is sapphire indeed. And we're looking for another strong reading of this watch. And we do get a fairly strong reading, actually not quite as high as the Citizen, surprisingly. So I'm not sure whether it's got some sort of different coating on or something, but it's definitely still sapphire. Be a nice close-up of each of these dials. Would love to know what you think in the comment section below. Has a much more prominent power reserve indicator compared to the other watch. Maybe that's a bit distracting for some of you. It is a big applied piece on there though, and I just find myself that applied pieces just also tend to look higher quality in general. Looks like more detail and effort has gone into the watch a lot of the time. And I quite like the majority of the markers on this. I do wonder what this watch would have looked like without the numerals though at 6 and 12. Perhaps this watch would have looked better if they were more standardized, because there is a lot going on in that top portion. I do think overall the watch looks pretty good though. And here's a closer look at that case finishing. Not the finest brushing, I have to say. Yeah, a little bit coarse on the sides there, but I do like the shape and selection of polished surfaces. Makes it almost look muscular in a way. Nice hench watch there. Seiko-like in some ways with those wide shoulders. And you do get a lot of conformity with the bracelet. Still probably better finished than the old one. This was always quite simplistic. Basically just felt like an upgraded Bambino, this one. Not a huge amount of difference. And I'll give you a closer look at the blue one. Very much like a dusty blue, this. Give that a good wind up. Hands you really can't fully appreciate unless I got super close with a macro lens. And then just give you a quick look at the bracelet. Looks similar to last time. Does seem to be solid links throughout. Quite a unique shape too. I do like it when brands play a little bit different. Not seen this exact setup before. There's polished strips and kind of elongated links as well. Looks a bit different than the standard Oyster style bracelet. So I do quite like that. Have a 3 micro adjustment clasp, and again, a nice milled clasp too with some graceful little edges there too. Wonder if that's to reduce the way it digs into your arm. I think it must be. Nice and sculpted. I like that. Yeah, it does seem to be a very usable and decent bracelet there. Not the best integration though. You can see it must be like a generic bracelet that's used across multiple models, which is a bit of a shame. You can see it just doesn't quite sit seamlessly in there. It has like a separate edge, so that could be improved. It's a shame, but the quality's good at least. And there's a look at it on my 6 1/4 inch wrist. Do like these watches more than I expected. Don't think I'd personally buy one, but if you did buy one, I certainly wouldn't blame you. They certainly look high quality for the price. Now, Orient Star more recently has been releasing other models with super textured dials for much more money than this, like for 2,000 quid. I mean, I would probably never spend £2,000 on a watch. And there was one that Orient wanted to send me, but you know, it was just out of my wheelhouse, to be honest. Looked like a nice enough watch, kind of going for that Grand Seiko-y kind of thing, I suppose, with the textured dials. But for super high value products like that, I don't know, I just don't want my opinion swayed or anything. Not sure I can really take them. Yeah, you can see here it isn't the thinnest, but it's also not super thick. Still probably a little large for my skinny arm, but I think for average size arms, these will fit quite well. The dial definitely looks higher quality. Has like a powdery sunburst, hard to explain. It's not the typical super radiant sunburst. And then of course you got those engraved rings around the chapter ring. This is the more intriguing of the two for sure. Yeah, I have to say, if those markers at 12 and 6 were switched, I think I might be infatuated with this. Does have some really nice touches other than that. Not quite sure why those two are there. Just feels a little bit inconsistent, dare I say. But the colour's good, the texture's good. Definitely a much better made watch than that Orient Star Classic. Has 100 meters of water resistance, by the way, this one. And I think they just said it's 316L steel. It isn't like 904 or anything. So there's a look at the best-selling Orient Star watch. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section below. What do you think of these rather unique watches? They do have these in 2 other colours as well, like a green and then what seems to be like a grey or something. Really have gone down that pastel route though for the most part. With this one, I've got no clue what you guys are going to think. Really don't know. Either way, they're both linked below. Thanks to TUS Watches for sending these over.